In addition to creating this piece on cradled wood and walking you through my process, I talk about why quality paints are important and how to protect your artwork so that the colors last for many years to come. All right, let's do this. Hello and welcome. This is Betty with Betty Frank's Art. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be working on cradled wood or wood panel. Um, this is, let's see, 8 by 8 by 2 inches on the side. So really deep sides, which I love, love, love working on the deep sides because I love creating on the sides. So you'll see how this one comes together along with the four sides coming together with it. As always, I love to start off with some mark making and anything goes in this process. I just like to start to loosen up and throw down some color. It eliminates the whiteness of the wood, which by the way was gessoed before I started. So it was gessoed and it dried, thoroughly dried. In that Tupperware container was gesso, but lately I've been using titanium white instead of gesso. Now, I think if you've watched a lot of my older videos, other videos, not even that old, probably like a few back, I was using gesso a lot for my white. But lately, I started using titanium white. I had a jar of it at the studio, just never bothered using it. And then recently I started using it and I was like, oh, I really like this titanium white. And the reason I like it is because it's very opaque and I feel that my colors are maybe just a tad bit even more vivid, but when I'm putting down white especially, I can cover up areas much faster than when I use gesso. Now, that's not to say that I don't love gesso because I still love gesso, and I love gesso because it is, it's got some tooth to it, but also it leaves a very flat finish to my pieces. But I also find that when I'm using Nova Color paints, which is what I'm using today, and I'm always using actually, unless I'm using up or trying to finish using up some Liquitex or golden paints that I have in my stash. But with Nova Color paints, what I find is that they dry to a matte finish, and I really love that. I used some high flow paints that I had on hand, and it left a really shiny surface. And what happened then is I couldn't do any mark making on top of it, and that was kind of frustrating for me. So I do love my Nova Color paints for a variety of reasons, and one of them being that they dry flat. Now, some of the other reasons I love them is because they are very inexpensive and also because the quality of the paints are, sorry, I'm being distracted by what am I doing there with that Indian yellow? I double dipped and I was just making a mess there. I love the quality of the Nova Color paints. The pigmentation is excellent. And if you're just getting started as an artist, and you're using craft paints, which nothing wrong with them because I started off with craft paints as well because that's what I could afford at the time. And honestly, I didn't know better. It was much later that I started learning about all these different paints. Liquitex being very easy to find, and Liquitex comes in a basic grade and a more professional grade. So there are two grades there. The difference between, your not professional grade and your professional grade is that the pigmentation load is so much better. And what that means is that you're actually using less paint, and the quality of that paint, the colors are just going to be much more vivid and bright and saturated than using a craft paint. So although you spend a little bit more money using quality paints, it's so worth it. So worth it in terms of getting a really good pigment load, but also when you're creating, it can be so frustrating when you can't get the color that you want, that true, bright, vivid, opaque, saturated color. So as I mentioned with Nova Color paints, I also love them because I don't worry about how much paint I put out on my palette. If it dries up, I don't really care because their paints are just so affordable. Now, the ones that you see on my desktop here are the 4-ounce jars, which are a great size for travel, great size when you're working small like this. I mean, these small jars of paints last me for years because when I'm working small like this, I really don't use up a whole lot of paint. So I've got a whole series of these, a whole selection of paints in Croatia because I travel to Croatia a couple of times a year to visit my parents, and I leave my paints there. And I haven't had to restock on anything except for gesso because I use so much gesso and so much white paint. But now I've got actually a small jar of the titanium white. So if anything, I'll probably have to restock on those, but they have lasted quite a bit. I think the one other one that I've used up a lot of is black because I tend to use a lot of black in the early layers of my pieces. So if you are interested in giving them a try, please use the link below. They recently started using a affiliate program, as I stumble out with those words, an affiliate program, and I was the first one that they asked to sign up for the program. Woohoo! I was super excited because I have been talking about them for years. If you go back to my videos from years ago, you will hear me talking about them because I truly do love their paints and super happy with them. And I have no desire to use any other paints other than to use up what I've had in inventory for probably more than 5 years now. Some of those paints have dried out, sadly, but some of them are still good. So anyway, use my link below, and if you can't find it, it's down in the description box, but if you can't find it, just leave me a message down below, and I'm happy to send you the link. And with that link, I am sending you my list of my favorite colors that I like to use, and I know I'm probably letting the cat out of the bag a little bit early, but Nova is actually going to be taking my list of favorite paints and creating a bundle with of them so that you can just order. And I don't know what we're going to call it, but I'm going to start calling it Betty's Bundle. And it makes it super easy if you want to just order the ones that I like to use the most to get you started. And in there, I include like couple of blues, couple of reds, couple of yellows, couple of, oh, what else do I have in there? A variety. There's white, of course. There's titanium, titanium white, and then the black as well. So a variety of different colors that I love to use. All right, so going back to my process, let's talk a little bit about process. So I put down those marks in the beginning, and then I went into putting black. I love putting down black for my background, and I just have some of it peeking through at the very end. Then from there, I then make a decision, do I want to go with cool colors or warm colors? Now, if you've been watching my videos, you know my reasoning behind warm colors and cool colors. So if you are new here, thank you so much for being here. I am so happy that you found me. I would love it if you would subscribe so that you can continue to follow me and also hit the bell so that you can be notified of my new videos as they come out. So going back to why do I like the using warm colors or cool colors, and the reason behind that is so the colors stay very clean and bright and vivid. And if I was to start mixing in, for example, right now I'm using cool colors. So your blues, your greens, purples as well. And I use yellow within that as well. Now, if I was to start introducing reds and oranges and started mixing those all together, at some point I'm going to get some mud. And I love mud, but not this early on. I like to introduce some neutral colors a little bit later. So by keeping my colors separated, I'm keeping the colors clean and true to their actual color, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. So that's why I like to keep them separate. So this time I decided to go with cool colors. There's no rhyme or reason. It's whatever I'm in the mood for. I just pull out either warms or cools. So I'm filling in a little bit here. On my first layer with color, I like to just make a lot of marks. I find that the more marks I make, the more choices I have later in terms of what I want to keep and what I want to cover up. Now, if I recall correctly, in this one, I was trying to stick with a limited palette, and I was trying to show you some of those colors at the very beginning when I was busy chit-chatting. I was trying to show the three color, I think it was three colors. So the blue that's off to near my right hand there, the yellow, and then what I think the other color was either the blue green or the teal. I'm going to have to go back and look at that later. But I was trying to limit my palette here. And that's something I don't often do just because I love color. I truly love all color. And I often have such a hard time limiting. But someone had put a comment in one of my videos asking if I would do another video on just using a limited palette. Now, if you are interested in a truly, truly limited palette, I have one, and I'm going to put a link for it here, but I have one where I'm just using black and white paint, black and white mark making tools, just purely black and white. And so you'd be surprised how many grays you can get with black, just using black and white. But also, what happens is you really are forced to focus on composition, on values, the color values, so that you can pull a painting together that is cohesive and makes sense, but only using the black and white paint. So that was a fun challenge to do. So as I mentioned, I've got the link there for you. And this one here, I was trying to do the same thing, but using just a few colors. But you'll find later, I end up throwing in a few warm colors. I just couldn't help myself. I felt this need to add in some warm colors, and so I did. But one thing I really love when you are limiting your palette is it's amazing how many colors you can make with a limited palette. Now, if you sit down and you just play around with one or two colors and white and then also black. Now, in this case, I'm trying to think, did I even have black here or did I use the blue for my black? You know what? I think I used the blue for my black because I couldn't find my jar of black. I'm set up in my dining room videotaping this because I recently moved and I used to have a studio in my garage. Well, in my new place, I decided I want to park my car in the garage. I don't want my studio out there. It's too cold out there. I'm tired of being so cold during the winter months and too hot during the summer months. So recently, my daughter helped me. We cleaned up the whole garage and we got my car in the garage. So excited to have my car in the garage. Now, what that meant was I didn't have any space to do this type of videotaping. So I did set up at the dining room table so that I can get these small pieces done. And it's nice and warm and cozy in the house. I created this in January of 2022. I am doing the voiceover also mid-January 2022. So I was very happy to be in a warm place creating. Now, the other thing I'm doing here is I'm actually on a Zoom call with a couple of my artist friends. We meet pretty much on a weekly basis, and we just spend some time together chatting and creating and doing our own thing. Always so much fun. And really, I encourage you, if you are just getting started as an artist, find your tribe, find your people who also love to create, who love to do some of the things that you love to do in terms of creativity. Because sometimes, your own family, they may or may not be supportive of what you're doing. So finding a group of folks who are doing what you're doing and can be supportive and give you feedback, especially if you are trying or your goal is to be a working artist, such as myself, where my income comes from the art that I create, the workshops that I teach. If you are going in that direction, find folks that are doing the same thing. And they don't have to be creating exactly like you do. They could be a different type of artist, but maybe pretty much on a similar journey, such as yourself, if you are one, either just trying to be creative, or two, trying to sell your art and be able to run a business, selling your art. So I can't stress enough the importance of finding your tribe, finding people like-minded that can support you, you can bounce ideas off of, and it's just amazing what that can do for you. And I get that on a weekly basis when I join other ladies and we talk not just about everyday life, because there's always that too, but we talk business as well, and include that and talk about our experiences and what's working and what's not working, especially like social media, right? If you're on social media, then you know the struggles of trying to reach more people on social media. How many times do you post something and it's like crickets, right? Even me with a lot of followers, I still don't get a lot of people seeing my art that I'm posting. There's stuff always going on with the algorithms, and trying to figure them out is so exhausting. And some days, I just post and I pray that as many people see it that can see it, and hope for the best all the time. So if you are interested in, that just reminded me, I've got a video, I've got 4 videos under my art business category. So if you go to my homepage on YouTube and scroll down a little bit, I've got my homepage very well organized. And I think the first category is my large art, and then my small art, and then it's my art business. And I've got several videos there if you are interested, for example, pricing your artwork, or if you're interested in doing art festivals. I've got a whole video on that. And then I've also got one on social media and Instagram specifically. So check those out. All right, I'm just like moving along on this. And I'm using a variety of different brushes. I've got 2 of them up there in my water sitting there. And right now, I believe this is the Rigger, which is like a script brush. It's a fine brush. And it just makes really smaller lines. Now, I'm working on an 8 by 8 inch wood panel. So I don't want to be using big brushes here. I want to use brushes that are appropriate for this size of panel, or this size of substrate. And the script brush works great for that. The other 2 brushes, I think they're like a size, I want to say like a 4 or a 6, or maybe even an 8. No, I think 8 would probably be maybe a little too big. But play around with different sizes, because it allows you to make different size marks, which to me, I think add more interest when they're different sizes. Sometimes I'll get in a rut, especially when I'm working large, and I'll have one brush in hand and I'll stick with it. And what I find later is like, I really should switch out my brush and add some more interest by having different sizes of marks on my artwork. So don't do what I do, switch them out more regularly. So I'm making hand gestures because I'm, like I mentioned, chit-chatting with my friends. I love working these sides. They are just, especially the 2 inch. 1.5 is good, but 2 inch, I mean, you could really get a lot of paint on those sides. I just love the way it continues around the corners. Now, these are great also if you've got a shelf. You can just put it on a shelf as opposed to hanging it up. Either way works, but I always think it's kind of fun when you can put art on a, on a side table or a shelf, cabinets. So I do recall correctly, I did not have black. I'm using a really dark blue, and I forget which one this is, and I'm kind of treating it as my black, which looks pretty good here. So, I talked about values and the importance of having values in your artwork. And here, let me talk real quick. I did leave that other piece. I set it aside to let it dry, and now I've come back. Now, I like to put hand lotion on my hands. Any hand lotion will work. I even use, oh, here we go. All right. Well, which one? I was trying to remember what I used. I think it was those right there. And then the Indian yellow as well. So somewhat limited, not super limited. Going back to the hand lotion in my studio, my large studio downtown San Jose, I just use the hand lotion from the dollar store. It works great because what happens is if I get some paint on my hands, then it's very easy to wash off. It comes off super fast with a little bit of soap and water and a little scrub brush. Okay, so I left it the way it was because when I was painting with my friends, I only had like an hour with them because I had some other things I had to do. Love that when it all dries up like that. And so I let it dry, and here I've come back to it. Oh, I think it was several days later that I came back to it. So here's a small brush. I think that's kind of a round brush. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to treat this like I'm starting all over. Oh no, actually I'm not. I'm going to actually add some accent colors. All right, so I know I said I'm trying to do a very limited palette, but I just needed a little bit of what Robert Burridge would call spice color. So he's got this really cool color wheel that he created, and he's got one indicator on there that's called the spice color. And what that basically means is you just put a little bit of that color in your painting. And so I've got my red and orange here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of color here. And I'm going to scribble on some color too. And this here is a Stabilo Woody, which is more of a crayon-like consistency. Now I should say, oh, and before I do, this is a Neocolor 2 crayon, and I think that was more of an orangey color. So if you are new to my channel, again, welcome. If you've been following me, thank you for coming back and for uh, being here with me for another video. What I wanted to tell you is, if you are new, is that I am inspired by my love for fields of flowers. So when I am creating my vision of fields of flowers, my abstracted vision of them. So I'm going to just continue painting here. It looked good, where I left it, but really, if you look at the details, it certainly wasn't done. It needed more work. So I'm coming in here and filling in, figuring out again what I want to keep, what I want to cover up. It's truly, you really don't want to keep everything because then that would be like too much. It would be too chaotic. So some areas do need to get covered up so that we can create quiet areas that are not so busy, and they just kind of add a little bit more, I don't know, besides the word quiet, I don't know what else to call it, just more serene areas, not so busy. So I like to balance, busy areas with quiet areas. And usually my corners tend to be my quieter areas. And then all the craziness is happening in the middle areas. Now, is that true 100% of the time? No, but most of the time it is. So I'm kind of going over some areas with the same color, but then adding new color over an existing color. So, for example, I might put some green over blue, but I like to leave a little bit of that blue showing through. So we talked about social media briefly. If you are on social media and would like to follow me there, where I post almost on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Facebook. I'm also on Pinterest. So a variety of ways to see my artwork. I briefly talked about a few of those mark making tools that I was using. Of course, I talked about Nova Color paints. In the description below, I am also including my favorite art supplies, so you can check those out as well. I'm adding some water to that paint so that, especially when I'm making little dots like this, it just is easier to make them if my brush is a bit wet. If you like my style of painting and would like to learn how I do this, then I've got a link down below in the description that takes you to a recorded online workshop that I did in 2020. It's been a very popular one, so I'm not ready to remove it because it will walk you through. We're together for 2 hours, and I walk you through all my steps. In addition to that, we do some exercises together on color and mark making. And I'm working larger, so I'm working on 24 by 18-inch paper. And the great thing about that particular video is I am answering questions from the students, and those questions are questions that a lot of folks, it's almost frequently asked questions, I guess you can say. So I'm sure I'll be answering your questions as well. You have unlimited access to the video. It's on YouTube, which I kind of love that about it because it's easy to get to. It's a private link once you make the purchase, and you don't have to have any special software or passwords to get to it. And you have unlimited access. Can't remember if I mentioned that already. I like that dark blue that I'm putting on right now. It's so pretty. So that's one of my darker values, in addition to the really dark that I added at the very beginning. Those are still peeking through, but more of those are going to get covered up. So this blue also acts as one of my darker values. So I love going right over what I've done before and adding more depth to it. When I'm done with this and I'm completely done, which I'll be showing here in the video, I always protect all of my artwork because I sell all my artwork. And when it goes out into the world to live in a whole new happy place, I want to make sure, oh, I'm pointing to that section up there because I'm not happy with it. So I want it, when it goes out in the world, I want it to last forever, or well, for almost forever. And one way that I can ensure that that happens in terms of the quality of the painting is to protect it. So I always varnish all of my pieces. I like to start off with, first of all, putting a spray fixative on it or a spray varnish to secure all of my marks. That way they don't move around. And then I use a Liquitex liquid varnish, I guess for lack of a better word, and I do at least 2 coats of that. And so it's important that I do that because what happens with the Liquitex varnish is that it has UV protection, and so the quality of the colors is going to last. My fear is that if I don't do something like this and I sell it, in a year or 2 from now, the colors start to deteriorate and they start to fade, and that person's not going to be happy with that piece of art anymore. And I just don't want that to happen. So I'm going to include a link here for you that is going to take you to a video that I put together on how I varnish my art on paper, but I use the exact same process whether it's on paper, canvas, or wood. So you can check that out if you're interested in finding out how I like to protect my pieces of art. Now here I'm coming in with a much lighter value, so a lot more white on my brush with maybe just a little bit of color on it. And you can see, I mean, immediately it really pops against those other colors that I've got surrounding it. Now I'm looking for, okay, well, where else? I want my eye to travel through the piece. So how do I do that? So I've added these marks here, which to me represent flowers. And that kind of helps draw the eye from the bottom moving upward. So more yellow there, a little bit darker than the previous yellow. Here we're getting pretty close to the end here. It's really coming together, adding some final touches. Now, I don't like to overdo it in terms of the final touches because I love coming in with mark making at the very end using the pencils and the crayons just to add a little bit more interest in a different type of way as opposed, not having all of it being paint. If you're enjoying the video, I would be so happy if you can give me a thumbs up and also subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet and hit that bell so that you're notified when I have another video coming out. So again, I'm using a somewhat limited palette, but isn't it amazing how many different colors can be created with just a few colors? And I know I've said this before, but in addition to creating art, I just love, love, love mixing colors. I mean, that's just makes me so happy. So here I'm kind of twirling my thumbs, so to speak, because I'm not sure what else I want to do, which indicates to me I'm coming to the end. Lightening up those areas a little bit more. I will go over some areas so many times because if I put down one color and then I put down another color next to it or close to it, or maybe even across the way from it, well, that plays off of each other. So I have to sometimes come back in and make some adjustments. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So it's that constant going back and forth and waiting to see, how one color is going to play against another color. It's kind of a dance going back and forth. Okay, I am drying this now so that I'm going to move into, I think I'm going to be moving into the mark making, or I may be setting it aside. I can't remember if I left it. So here I'm showing you that crayon. Because it's a waxy, kind of like waxy crayon, it is really shiny because I put some heat on it, and so it melted it a little bit. So that's an example where a fixative spray is going to secure that. Okay, so we're back. And you know what? It's a different day because I'm wearing a sweatshirt. I'm wearing my sweatshirt that is not meant for painting, which tells me I didn't paint this day. So we're doing final mark making. I like to start with my pencil, number 2 pencil, just like I did at the very beginning. And this mark making is very intentional. It's not a bunch of scribbling and not paying attention to what I'm doing because this is kind of like the icing on the cake. So I'm paying attention to all the sides as well and making sure that I do a little something on each side to add some interest to those as well. Now, oftentimes, the bottom's not going to show, but to me, I'm such a detail-oriented person that it's so important to me that I also do something with the bottom of this 2-inch sides. So there, I was just showing that those two are very similar in color, but this one has just a little bit more brightness to the green than the Stabilo Woody does. So I decided to use this one. But honestly, it was very little notice, very slight difference between the two. Again, going from one side to another and adding different marks. I try not to do if I do circles on one side, I try not to do circles on every single side. I try to, shake it up a bit. This here is a Neocolor 2 crayon as well. And sometimes I like to come in and just smudge it out a bit so that it's not this perfect solid line. It just softens it up a bit. Now, if you're still hanging out with me this far into the video, first of all, I just want to say thank you. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it when you are sticking with me and maybe you're even painting with me, which is ultra cool if you're doing that. So how about you leave me, let me see. I think last time I said a heart. So how about this time we say a flower? If there's a flower that you like, emoticon flower, or if you don't have access to that, because I think people who are watching me from their computer do not have access to all those emoticons that you have on your phone that you have easy access to. So if you don't have access to it, just write the word flower, and I will know that you stuck it out and you are coming in to the very end with me. This one here is a China marker or a grease pencil, the white one, but then I put it down and decided not to use it. I went back to the Woody instead because I can smear it, I can smudge it much easier than the China marker. And I like to just come back right in and just lighten that up even more. And that's why I'm going back over some of those areas. Now I had some color smudged on my fingers, so that's why I was wiping it off on that rag over on the side. This side definitely needs some white. I just find it amazing each time, when you come in with a lighter value, how much it can really change. And this side already had quite a bit of it. A little bit more here. If you'd like to join my email list, I've got a link down below for you to do that. Folks on my email list are always the first to know if I've got workshops coming up, and also all of my art on paper that I create goes out to my email list first, and they get first opportunity to purchase. So if you'd like to join, I've got the link down below. All right, I have signed it. I like to sign in pencil because sometimes I mess it up and I have to erase it and do it again. Oh, I meant to slow down this part of the video. All right, well, it's not too fast. You can see some of those detail pictures. I've got photos as well at the very end. I think I've got photos. Yes. All right, showing you the sides here, the top. Get up a bit closer. And the right side. I love scribbles. One thing I didn't do on this one was drips. That's another thing I love to do, but didn't do it this time. All right, and there it is. I am loving it. And I ended up calling this one Set Me Free. Thought it was, I don't know, came in my head and thought I'd go with it. So there it is there. And I've got a few other pictures. So here I've got it with a few keys just so you can kind of see how large it is. And then here's some shots where you can see the sides of it as well. Let's see what else we got here. The top side, and then I think the next one should be the bottom. Yep, there's the bottom of it. I really like the bottom, almost wish it was one of the sides. All right, I appreciate you so much for being here. And remember, leave me the word flower or leave me a flower, and you can check out some more videos here. Wishing you a super fabulous and creative day.